Okay. This is gonna sound really dumb, but okay, so we're in chapter 9. I'm gonna go to chapter 9 real quick because that's what we're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It says here, does the disciple who subjects only once rebirth to say to himself, I am entitled to the honors or rewards of the ones to be reborn, right? And I figured that was really interesting. And the reason being is because with this particular change, the way the whole world is changing at this point, all of the really big changes,
Mm-hmm.
it was really interesting of the fact is that it's about a time of reinvention.
Mm. Yeah, 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 for sure.
It's about a time of reinvention, and I've just realized that there were a lot of things that people are learning how to reinvent themselves. You know what I'm saying?
They have to.
Become they have to adapt and survive and
Well,
evolve.
I don't even think it's just that they have to. I mean, it's just like for the people that have been disrupted, that were so secure,
Hmm.
this should be kind of a wake up call. Be like, what am
Yeah.
I, how am I non-essential? How does the world stop without me there, right? Like, I mean, and
First noble truth: to live is to suffer.
sure.
Second noble truth: attachment to the impermanent creates suffering.
Hmm. Yeah,
They were attached and they relied, and they basically just took for granted at that point, took for granted this is how it is, it's never going to change. And you're right, this does need to be a wake-up call. You've got to be flexible, you've got to be able to grow, because you're going to have to grow in the
which I
environment
mean,
that currently exists.
you know, uh, was what you were doing worth it, even, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
do you miss it? Or do
Mm-hmm.
you miss like the people? Do you miss the busyness? Do you, you know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that kind of I think about, and especially for the people that are like doing the right thing. This is how you do it, right? This is how you do it. But the the idea of like that security, right? That blanket, like, and you're doing all the right things, and then all of a sudden it's like, ta-da! That's all
Yeah.
fucking gone, right?
And
Small
it
business
reminds.
owners, right? Like, I mean, even small
Mm-hmm.
business owners that were flourishing,
Mm-hmm.
gone.
Yeah. And see, this is really interesting. In Buddhism, there was a reverend that said, it's called "Have you ever got a gift?" And he says, okay, if somebody was to give me a Ferrari, very big, that's a very big gift.
Mm-hmm.
And on the first day, I will be very happy to see that Ferrari.
Mm-hmm.
On the second day, something happens and accident, somebody steals it. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not totally upset because I was in a position where I once had, and I'm grateful for that moment for however long.
For sure.
Nothing in this universe is completely constant except for one thing, and that is change.
Sure.
And people have to understand that there are always going to be changes, but that doesn't mean that everything gets cataclysmic. It just means you have to grow in different
For
ways.
sure.
And
Yeah.
I think that everybody just accepting what the norm is and continuing to go forward, and not with that tunnel vision, they don't
Mm.
understand that there's another whole different 360 view of everything. Sometimes they're like this.
That's
When
right.
people are like that and they can't see everything, or they're attached to just seeing what's in front or what have you, it's beginning costing, which means they've got to start adjusting. And that's what's going to have to happen.
For sure. I love it. Let me what I'll do is the I'll share the chapter 9. We'll read through it
Mm-hmm.
real quick, and then we'll just kind of
Cool.
talk through it. Sound good?
Yeah. Sounds awesome.
I gotta sneeze, and it's not gonna happen. All right. All right. Diamond Sutra, chapter 9. Buddha then asked, "What do you think, Subhuti? Does one who had entered the stream which flows to enlightenment say, 'I've entered the stream'?" "No, Buddha," Subhuti replied. A true disciple entering the stream would not think of themselves as a separate person that could be entering anything. Only that disciple who does not differentiate themselves from others, who has no regard for name, shape, sound, odor, taste, touch, or for any quality, can truly be called a disciple who has entered the stream? Buddha continued, does a disciple who is subject to only one more rebirth say to himself, I am entitled to the honors and rewards of a once to be reborn? No, Lord. Once to be reborn is only a name. There's no passing away or coming into existence. Only one who realizes this can really be called a disciple. Subhuti, does a venerable one who will never be more reborn as a mortal say to himself, I am entitled to the honor and rewards of a non-returner? No, perfectly enlightened one, a non-returner is merely a name. There's actually no one returning and no one not returning. Tell me, Subhuti, does Buddha say to himself, I've obtained perfect enlightenment? No, Lord, there is no such thing as perfect enlightenment to obtain. If a perfectly enlightened Buddha were to say to himself, I'm enlightened, he would be admitting there's an individual person, a separate self, and a personality, and would therefore not be a perfectly enlightened Buddha. Subhuti then said, Most honored one, you said that I, Subhuti, excel among thy disciples in knowing the bliss of enlightenment, in being perfectly content in seclusion, and in being free from all passions. Yet I do not say to myself that I am so, for if I ever thought of myself as such, then it would not be true that I escaped ego delusion. I know that in truth there is no Subhuti, and therefore Subhuti abides nowhere, that he neither knows nor does not know bliss, and that he is neither free from nor enslaved by his passions. Man, there's a lot in this one. This isn't like some of the other ones that were like shorter. with
Yeah.
like with like 4 lines. I had to look this up real quick though, right? When we say one who has entered the stream, right? What does that mean?
Okay. What he is specific. Okay. What. Okay. Okay. I'm going to try to make sure. I'm going to try to cram this into the most simplest form that I possibly can get, just to get you to get on at least the same universe with this one. Okay. Because there is, like you said, there is a lot of things to unpack here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Number one, the whole constant understanding of this goes into the 6 realms of existence. And you're talking about, okay, hold on. I'm trying to basically decode, you know what I'm saying? I know what it means, but I'm trying to decode it for you. So give me just a second.
Yeah.
Realms. I should have probably pulled that page up first when I first read this, but no. Okay, 6 realms of existence in Buddhism. Okay, where is the nature? About nature. You know what? Yeah, that's perfect. That'll yeah, this is good. Okay, I like to go to different sources for different specific takes on specific parts of the Buddhist Dharma. When you start breaking it down, getting this nitty gritty, there's sources that I personally like to go to. Okay. The 6 realms of existence are basically 6 particular phases of life in which we go through, and every day we shift from one to the other one, and there is no specific pattern, quote unquote, because of the fact that the universe is built, and Buddhism is built on the fact of causality of if and then. Remember, I don't know if we've had that discussion, right, about Buddhism, religion being about the if and then scenario, and how there are limitless possibilities.
No, but I buy in.
Okay. Basically, because Buddha says that there is no specific, because existence can go forward in any direction, because there is limitless possibilities, because nothing is preordained.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Then what it basically breaks down the understanding that foresight really is just the ability to accurately decrypt what is about ready to happen beforehand, also known as the sixth sense intuition. You know what I'm saying? Being able to see things ahead. Okay, the nature of this basically means these 6 realms, which go from absolutely wonderful, which is heaven, all the way through hell, and earth is in between. It's been a while since I did this one. You know what I'm saying? It's also known as the realm of the gods, and heavenly beings, heaven. And then there's going to be those of the titans, which are not necessarily way up there, but you're talking about your quote unquote bungalow kind of inner city people here, right?
Mhm.
Then you've got your realm of hungry grats and ghosts. This is the this is basically your like your slower down, more suffering, more struggling, blah blah blah. Number 4 is the hell realm. Number 5 is the animal realm, which basically you become part of the fact you start losing all of your consensus or what have you. It's complete and total annihilation and chaos. And then the human realm, in which we normally exist, and this is the one where people begin to escape. This is where the creation of the id and the ego and the super ego understanding of psychology comes into play. So really, okay, so what this basically means is that we go through these 6 realms, we go through these 6 realms of existence.
Mhm.
And these 6 realms of existence happen every single day in specific levels, give or take what's going on in our world or what have you. And the realm of the gods or what have you is where a lot of people think they are, but they're actually in what's known as the human realm. And the reason being is because the human realm of all of this is to escape into one specific idea or one way and just want to stay there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're trapped in that particular one, so they're holding on to that. And what they don't realize is that the ones that continue to come right around are based upon the actual karmatic existence of becoming one and moving forward in attachment. And because impermanence is a big play here, because everything changed so drastically, you have people that are suffering because they've attached on to all of these ideas and all of these ways of the way things were going. And
Right.
he's basically saying, oh, well, if a person says they've entered the stream of enlightenment, which means the one great connection, which puts us all together, right? The sutra itself.
Okay.
If we are to be one with the multiverse in that particular fashion, then we must understand that we are now a part of the multiverse, which means there is no longer an I.
Okay.
So believing you entered enlightenment and be like, oh, I entered enlightenment is never ever going to actually supposedly happen on that moment. And when it does, you don't speak of it. And the reason being is because of the fact that because that is where your path lies does not necessarily mean where somebody else's point of enlightenment is going to be at.
I like that. I like that a lot. But I mean, would it also, even if you had reached alleged enlightenment, it can't be translated, right? I mean, it can't be conveyed, right? So that it's literally it's unspeakable.
No, that is
right?
correct.
Right.
And yeah, the Bodhi path. And the reason being is because remember, it goes back to the fact that truth has no form. See, in the universe, there is no, and I think I've told you that I said this before to you. I think it was you. It was the universe is built upon the understanding that the truth has absolutely no real form. It is fact and conclusion. The fact leads you to the conclusion. You see what I'm saying? That's how that works. The truth and being in the best way of basically the Bible being the truth is in the beholder, then that is basically meaning you are giving the truth a form in which you can truly understand, but your truth and my truth may not always be the same thing.
Fair enough. However, like, and I still even kind of remember like when you were doing the alignment with like the glasses on the table. Like,
yes.
Right. That and that was more to alignment and right way seeing. But when you're speaking the truth, I understand it as the truth. Is that and I'll use Dave Gieselman kind of as an example, right? Like when he's speaking his truth, I recognize it as the quote unquote truth. Is that
right.
not, so does truth not then have well, it's like a non-form, a resonance.
Yeah, non-form. Yeah, that's exactly what that is. And this is the reason being, because when you give it truth to you, it is because it is that point where you can see exactly what it is and you understand exactly what it's going to convey. It's basically this complete and total zero balanced alignment harmony kind of thing. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I think that's what he's saying here. Is that what he's saying here, right? The disciple does not differentiate themselves from others, who has no regard for name, shape, sound.
Yes.
You can't give it a form, right? That's the only person can be called a disciple who has entered the stream, because it's formless, right?
Right.
Okay. Let's keep. I don't have a whole bunch of time today, so we got to keep moving. So this is another part, right? Does a disciple who is subject to only one more rebirth say to himself, I'm entitled to the honors and rewards of a once to be reborn? Now, it's just as somebody who feels like or is at the end of the cycles and realizes that there's like only one more round until they're fully enlightened or something, or nirvanic.
See, that's the other issue about that too. See, okay, that can be interpreted one of two ways. I'm going to go with possible B, okay? Just for the sheer context of this one. You see what I'm saying? Because remember, this is one of those if-then kind of scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I'm understanding it the way I am, I may be okay. We'll just give it a go. Okay. First of all, to be completely conclusive and understanding that you are only one more time around or what have you, and that basically tells me that you believe you already have the answer. And the question is, how are you going to know until you're at that point?
Right.
Okay. So again, going back with the fact that that kind of level of enlightenment is actually unspeakable, because you can't put it into that particular form. The resonance is behind it. It's like, the Buddha will always help guide you to that if they actually put when there actually is people that are capable of putting that message into other things, i.e. the thousand-armed cannon, which can appear in any form it needs to, known as the God/Goddess of Mercy. And with that said, I believe that he is, where it says only one realizes this can happen, can be really called a disciple, right? Mm-hmm. And then it says this is where its truth is like he's putting it in saying, oh, well, it's only one more cycle. Well, the next question is going to be, how do you know that it's the only cycle? How do you know that there is not part of another part of the cycle that you are now coming into? You see what I'm saying? Right. It could be just one part of a whole part of another bigger part. You don't know. So if you say and then it says perfectly enlightened, and the bottom one here, right? Where it says the non-returner or what have you.
Yeah, would the non-returner be the person who feels like this is the last round?
Right. Okay. Then how do you even know that? You see what I'm saying? Yeah, so, and with that being said, then that's the reason why they said no, it wouldn't actually be any of that. You know what I mean? There would be none of that there. Once you know, and okay, you already know. You know what I mean? It's okay. You understand. It is understanding, and it is not agreement or not. It is complete understanding, and you know what I'm saying. You've let go of all of the detachments or what have you that could have clouded your judgment. You've reached this perfect pinnacle, and perfection is given over time. So in Buddhism, there's no such thing as knowing whether or not you're a non-returner.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, how do you know you've gotten there? All right. I mean, especially if you're still alive. I don't know.
And if we are all beginners, starting and every day is a new beginning, that means that if nothing is predestined, because that's the other part where believing in destiny is a double-edged sword that Buddhism constantly will not challenge, but explain for people who are very dead set on believing that there are things that are destined, quote unquote, to happen or what have you. Like, I'm destined for this and holding on to that. Mm-hmm. Buddhism warns a lot about that playing on the ego specifically. And the reason being is because if the truth begins to arise that maybe that's not where you were supposed to be, then what are you going to do at that point? Are you going to, with integrity, understand that and move on to a different direction? Or are you going to fight it every step of the way until it becomes a monster and consumes you?
Right. Just kind of accepting things as they are versus like trying to shape them yourself. Exactly.
And the people that do reach that or what have you, they reach that kind of level. They're not typically, it's like this. If I, as a reverend of the Buddhist faith and true faith, go forward to express those values, to express and expound those values, which means, live as a Buddhist, how I see Buddhism to be, right? I do my best to live right by the words of the Buddha. Mm. Okay. With you and me and you discussing things, there is a whole different level of like dialogue at that point. And if I, as a Buddhist, can spread good to you, even if it is one tiny thing, you get one good thing out of our conversations and deal or what have you, then I did my job. if
Right.
it's kind of like parenting, in other words, like parenting and anything else you really deeply commit yourself to,
Sure.
you do the greatest good you can. And if you move that mountain 15 feet to the left, so you can go ahead and just, go all the way over there and be able to walk through the valley without having to take your family all the way up and down the mountain, you didn't commit a super act of God. You committed an act of a father, because that's what parents do, and that's what family men do. You see what I'm saying?
Right,
So
right,
you reached the standard, and there is no specific standard in Buddhism except for doing your absolute and honest best.
right.
So you see what I'm saying? That's why the whole idea of the non-returner thing is more so a question of, well, is this really how this happens? Because they're starting to try to put labels on very significant movements and forms of understanding. You see what I'm saying? Oh, I know this, I don't have to be here. What if it's not about you always being there and knowing that? What if it's about you being able to help somebody else understand that? You see what I'm saying?
No,
You know what I
100%.
mean?
Well, I mean, yeah, I actually, I feel like I do, right? I had a conversation the other day where somebody asking me, different questions or dialogue that we had. Unless we'd had that dialogue, then, the answers wouldn't have come through me, right? Like in that way. Like, so there were
Right.
epiphanies that I had that helped him, but they were answers to questions that he was asking me, right? Like, and so unless, I was kind of open to those answers coming through me for him, right?
Right.
Is that what we're talking about here? Like,
Pretty much.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's
I mean,
exactly what it is.
like if we don't have this dialogue, then, then you're not kind of, searching yourself, right? And then
Right.
you're not able to kind of facilitate. My hope and guess too is that, like, as we talk, like something comes through for you as well, right? Where like you're like,
Hosa.
right? So, um,
This is called Hosa.
was it
This is called Hosa.
HOSA?
Hoza, yes. Hoza, Hosa.
What's that?
It's a gathering. It is a gathering of people in the Buddhist religion. What it is like we do normally sit in a circle, and what they do is they exchange and they discuss the applicable, how to apply the Buddhist principles into your life, given the struggles that you've got right now. And is there anything that could probably be able to help shape how that works? If you have not noticed, the Diamond Sutra is a very, unlike the other sutras, which are this one's still very symbolic. But if you have not noticed, it has got a lot of very strong fail-safe, these are the outline principles, this is how it is, this is exactly what this particularly means, misunderstanding this is on you. You know what I mean?
Well,
And
yeah.
And it basically goes into integrity, and it goes into a lot of integrity. So you know what I'm saying? If you don't know, you don't know, then that means you need to back up. But if you try to pretend you know, oh, I'm going into enlightenment, I'm doing this, perfect enlightenment. Okay, well, how do you know what perfect looks like?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And
no idea. Right. Yeah. Agreed.
so,
Okay. I got you.
And that's why most of the time when I speak with you, I don't speak from a position of quote unquote authority. It's more so as, this is what I know as, you know what I'm saying, as a Buddhist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is what you know up to this point.
Yes,
as you know it, right? Like as you are able to, your life experiences plus your knowledge, plus application gives you the ability to have that discourse up until this point. Tomorrow, these answers would be different, maybe. Right?
Yeah. You're looking up something and you find out so and so miswrote X, Y, and Z on this thing. You got to send it back, like, hey, look, here's what I found. You know what I'm saying? And then at that point, because Buddhism also puts into its dialogue, and you've seen it in several examples, that even Buddhism and Buddhism principles, or the way that Buddha may have described something, it closes into reason to say that, oh, well, this is absolutely wrong. You see what I'm saying? That is the reason why Buddhism always says that if science truly proves something is possible, then Buddhism acknowledges that, you know what I'm saying, that this is scientifically blah, blah, blah.
Which to me is one of the things I think is very attractive about Buddhism, is its willingness to change with the times.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
because it doesn't have to compromise Buddhism is one of those religions that has made it very clear that it is a practice, and it is a practice, and it is a lifelong commitment, and it is a relationship in your life that you're going to choose to have, and what you choose to deal with it is completely up to you. You
Right.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that is how Buddhism stays alive. It does not have to keep holding down to all of these traditions, because even, as you can see, even in Buddhism, in the Buddhist text itself, it specifically outlines the ability to, okay, well, this probably is not in the instance that this works for me, but I've seen this work for other people. You see what I'm saying? If
Oh, yeah,
nothing
yeah.
else, it's another tool in the bucket.
It's just
And I like,
you haven't, like, in that example, it'd be you simply haven't figured out how to apply it that way for yourself.
right. And it's just like, there's just like it says, no, Lord, there is no such thing as as perfect enlightenment to obtain. You know what I'm saying? If a
Right.
perfectly enlightened Buddha were to say to themselves, I am enlightened, he would be admitting that there's the admitting of self. Oh, self still exists. Rather,
Hmm.
I'm suffering. There is suffering, because suffering true it brings you to one of the six realms of existence.
Hmm.
And depending on how bad it is, it can also bring you into hell, where everything is chaos. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the thing is that those will shift always back and forth, but how they shift depends on how you deal with them. If you're getting into chaos and everything else, you're starting to get lost into that realm into that realm where things are going to stop losing reason and stuff. You know what I mean? And people forget that at some points in time you can choose without really choosing to stay there.
Well, yeah, that's what I was thinking right there. Is like you don't have to stay there, and you have to recognize that you are there and make a conscious choice to be somewhere else.
Exactly. You have to be somewhere else, or you have to change the environment that you're in, or what have you, to do the best that you can to be able to bring that down. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And
Right.
chaos is not going to get under control until somebody makes the decision to not let the chaos get to them and bring it under control. I'm going to shut this down. This is not going to happen. Not on my watch. Sorry. Next, moving on next. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
And that
Yeah.
takes a person, and that's where that leadership and that strength comes into play. You know what I mean? That's where also the Mahakala is one of those parts of Buddhism a lot of people don't realize. This is where this connects into it.
Would you say
Because,
Mahakala?
yep, the Mahakala, the guardian of the monastery, the ire of the Buddha, so to speak.
The ire of the Buddha. Well, let's
Yep.
look at this too, right? He'd be admitting that there's an individual person, a separate self and personality, would be to not recognize that you're either all of it or none of it, right?
Right.
Right. I mean, so what I mean by that is, just at least so I've been listening to too much Vedanta society recently. But what the one thing that I love that he keeps talking about, that Swami keeps talking about, is that the clay pot, right, or the
Mm-hmm.
wave in the ocean, right? Like, I mean, the wave is not separate from the ocean, whereas, like, again, an individual person is not separate from the all.
Yeah.
Is that what he's kind of saying here?
Yeah. That's what it boils down to, is like there if you, because the question is going to be, again, there, if you're to say that there is a perfect enlightenment, then that means that you are setting a standard. There has never been, Buddhism is not about perfection, it is about perfecting yourself. And Buddhism is not about seeking the approval of your perfection. It is simply acknowledging that you are a better person than you were yesterday. That's really all Buddhism comes down to. And that principle right there is something that you begin to incorporate with the Hinayana, which is the eightfolded path. And this goes into the one called right work. And that puts you, and that's where you begin to have to start executing all of the things that your principles at that point. You know what I mean? Right work, as in, what do you do to begin to carry this wisdom with you? You know, and that's why Sangha is very important. You know, like the communities and the people around you or what have you, because they are all together with you. You know what I mean? They're connected to you. You know.
Right, right. I definitely know that we talked about Sangha before, but there's the appreciate the Sangha and appreciate those that are along the way, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I love that line, because really, if you're in this community already, then the assumption is, not everybody's on the way to the same
Right.
community or the same thing, but I mean,
Mhm.
definitely, there are people who are on their way, right?
Yeah.
And when you talk to them and chat with them, and you know that they're on their way, and you also know the ones that aren't coming today,
Right. Yeah. And
right?
there's
Yeah,
no, and the thing, and what people also have to realize is that there is no set standard specifically for anyone when that happens. It's
right,
going to happen where it needs to, because the universe is about cause and effect. There is no predestination.
right,
You see what
right.
I'm saying?
Well,
And
anything's
that
possible, right? Like, I mean, anything's
exactly.
possible, and I think it's your actions, your decisions that you make that bring one of those possibilities closer.
Right. And then that's where it goes into right effort, right work, right. So you see what I'm saying? And
Hmm.
right was always defined as what is appropriate, what is ethical, what is moral, and what is capable in that particular point in time. Because the Buddhist principles are always going to be about it's like the Diamond Sutra is probably one of the bigger points that I point out. These are always, I see them as technical manuals for understanding crazy in the universe.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the reason being is because it goes into this whole if and then scenario, and it can basically take you, if you ask the right questions, it can
Right.
take you learning what you know, and just learning what you learn along the way. You'll eventually come to the tools to understand it.
For
It'll
sure.
basically be like, boom, this is about what you've given us. And that's what I think
Right.
is really cool about this particular religion, because there are so many different placards of it, and they connect. And you can always see how that works. You know what I mean? So there's so many different sects of Buddhism too. So people are doing do their best everywhere they go. You know,
For sure.
that's and I think that's probably one of the greatest things about a conversation with you too, is because it's always just it's, you know what I'm saying, it's always enjoyable.
Well, I
I
appreciate
love
that. Yeah. I enjoy the
oh yeah.
conversations too. Yeah. Let's look at this one here too. So,
Mm.
Subhuti, most honorable one, you said that I, Subhuti, perfect content seclusion. Yet I did not say to myself, for so. For if I ever thought of myself as so, it would be true. It would not be true that I escaped ego delusion. So, if he accepts, basically, if I'm reading this right, if he accepts a label, he's still got ego attachment.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what's happening there?
Yep.
And then, he can't, if he accepts a label, then that means that he's attached to something, which means like he can't know bliss and neither be free nor enslaved by his passions. And then, like, he doesn't have to, like, being enslaved by your passions can be a bad thing because I don't know, feel free to, whoa, like,
Being a slave to your passions means that you are very deeply and unhealthily attached to your passions, and therefore attachment leads to suffering, the second double truth.
okay, so he's still, that by holding on to labels and passions and attachments, that's keeping you from bliss's door.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair? Okay,
Yep.
I think we have a couple seconds to go through. Let's check 10. See if we have time. I have 25 minutes. See
I'm
how big
sorry
it
I
is.
ramble. Sorry I
No, it's
ramble.
totally good. It's totally good. Let's see if we can knock it out. Diamond Sutra 10, chapter 10. The Buddha then continued, what do you think, Subhuti? When I was in a previous life with Dipakara Buddha, did I receive any definite teaching or attain any degree of self-control whereby I later became a Buddha? No, honorable one, when you were a disciple of this other Buddha. In truth, you received no definite teaching, nor did you attain any definite degree of self-control.
Oh,
Subhuti, know also that if any Buddha would say, I will create a paradise, he would speak falsely. Why? Because a paradise cannot be created, nor can it be uncreated. A disciple should develop a mind that is in no way dependent upon sights, sounds, smells, tastes, sensory sensations, or other mental conceptions. A disciple should develop a mind which does not rely on anything. Therefore, Subhuti, the minds of all disciples should be purified of all thoughts that relate to seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching, and discriminating. They should use their minds spontaneously and naturally without being constrained by preconceived notions arising from their senses. Suppose Subhuti, a man has an enormous body. Would the sense of personal existence he had also be enormous? Yes, indeed, Buddha, Subhuti answered. His sense of personal existence would be enormous. But the Buddha has taught that the personal existence is just a name for it is, in fact, neither existence nor non-existence. So it only has the name personal existence. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I don't know who was the. So I don't know who Dipankara is.
The Buddha of the past.
Is that what that is? Is that what that
Yes,
means?
that is the
Buddha
enlightened one
past?
of the past. Yes, and the reason being is because this particular Buddha, remember there are 28 Buddhas, and this particular Buddha was believed to have been even older than the Gautama Buddha, okay, which is also regarded as the present Buddha. Imagine that. And it has been forecasted with the Maheshwara Buddha, which is known as the Buddha, the future Buddha. So these specific Buddhas are known as the Buddhas of 3 times, okay, past, present, and future.
Okay.
Now, what this basically was is he just. Okay, I'm going to give this the best go I can specifically for what you're.
Well, let me see this real quick here, right? So okay, so that tells me like this is like one of the other Buddhas, right? And did he receive any definite teachings or any degree of self-control? He received no definite teaching nor attained any definite degree of self-control. And I think to me, that would just cite that can't be given to you from somebody else.
Right.
Is that what he's saying there?
Basically what he is saying is that when you went with the Buddha of the past, you received absolutely nothing because nothing was given to you because you worked for it.
Or did you already have it?
Yes.
So I mean, and by saying, and I love I love listen to somebody else. And this is Jesus. I think this comes out of the Gospel of Thomas is, do we know what our end looks like? And he's like, well, do you know what the beginning looks like so that you know what the end looks like, right? And no, right? So I mean, it's really there's nothing to be learned. There's nothing to be learned again because it's already within you.
That's a rather that is a rather one that it's okay. That would with it already being there, then that would probably mean that you would having to be waking up that form of enlightenment, that 40 Bodhism. So yes, that in that particular degree, I could say I can agree with you on that one. I can't.
You say 40 Bodhis?
Yeah, for the Bodhi path that you're on. Okay. If you've already had something there because you're you know what I'm saying, you're believing in the reincarnation kind of cycle, right?
Okay.
And you're saying that you already had it there, then the answer is going to be yes. Because if you're reincarnated, you go through over lifetimes or what have you, and you're continuing to learn things over and over again. As you continue to learn them over and over again, think about it, it's just like practice makes perfect. You do something often enough, you're going to be really, really good at it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if you're talking about lifetimes of being able to do this over and over again, simply because those things continue to carry on, there's no guarantee that they would or wouldn't pass that, but they do at that point. Then you are, yes, you've already had that with you. Yes, it's probably going to develop along the way, and then you're going to begin to start building again and becoming stronger, more enlightened, more learned. You know what I mean? These are going to be the ways. It's always about re-improving and doing better than what you already have. So going forward, yes, I'd have to say that's something that you can't agree with. Some people never see that part of it. You know what I mean?
Okay. All right. I probably wouldn't have looked at it from like a birth rebirth cycle kind of way. Just like, you know, but just like if there is no end and there is no beginning, then there's always that truth built into you, right? I mean, it's already there, right? It's like Laffy Taffy, except different.
Yeah.
Stretch it out like it just never ends.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we'll take it. No Laffy Taffy. It's okay. So Buddha also that if any Buddha would say, "I will create a paradise," he would speak falsely. Why? Because paradise cannot be created, nor can it be uncreated. Um, because nothing exists.
Mhm.
Is that right? I mean, what do you got there?
Yeah. Okay, first of all, if a Buddha can say, "I will create paradise," first of all, you already have said self at that point and paradise at that point. So you're already beginning to limit and conclude that this is what paradise is supposed to be, speaking
Mm-hmm.
specifically from the self.
Mm-hmm.
Well, your paradise may not be the same as mine.
Mm-hmm.
So if I make this paradise and drag you into it, guess what? It might just go straight to hell for you because I
That's my
like all
straight
my
hell.
kids
Right,
over here.
right,
Yeah,
right,
you know
right,
what I
right.
mean?
Sure.
That might not be paradise for you. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? You might be you sitting over there with, you know what I'm saying, at a giant pool place with like, little few coconut drinks, watching the waves and stuff. That might be paradise for you.
For a day. For
Yeah.
sure. For sure. Okay, I get it. I get it. A disciple is to develop a mind which is in no way dependent upon sight, smell, smells, sensory sensations, or any mental conceptions. A disciple is to develop a mind which does not rely on anything. I get the sensory, right? I get the no to the five uh, um, senses, right? Because this
Mm-hmm.
is because even that's a developed sense, right? Like that
Mm-hmm.
overall thing is all about like what hurts me may not hurt another, or again,
Mm-hmm.
right? And sight, sounds, and smells are all sensory sensations are going to be specific to me, correct?
Yep, yep.
And mental conceptions kind of collude with all the aforementioned there, and also all my experiences. Those are all my mental conceptions, my inferences, and everything else like that. A disciple should develop a mind which does not rely on anything. What would you say there?
That basically means what it means by rely on is simply the mind has to be able to make the leveled and judgmental decision. You see what I'm saying? It cannot cave to chaos. It cannot cave to knee jerking. It cannot cave to any of the awarenesses, the smells, the sense. You see what I'm saying? Like
Right.
for some people, smelling a fire kind of would worry them because they always have that worry about a fire burning out of control. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
As
if
a
I see a bear,
level.
I'm fucking running.
Yeah, right. And the thing is that it is where the mind has to go, okay, that bear is really big and hungry and probably going to eat you. No, going over and trying to see if it wants a back rub is probably a bad idea.
Right.
So you see what I'm saying? Because
Right.
most people
Right.
see bears and they go, oh, how cute, bears.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No bear. But so disciples should develop a mind which does not rely on anything.
Because sometimes you can't be where they're not going to be. So you have to learn to tune them out of your judgment. Like if you're in the middle of like cooking and everything else and something suddenly burns, you know what I mean? And you've still got everything else. You can't let everything else go bad. So you've got to
Right.
figure out what you're going to do, you know?
Right.
So that's kind of what that basically says.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think my head's still trying to grasp it. That's okay. Therefore, Subhuti, the minds of all disciples should be purified of all thoughts that relate to, the above. They should use their minds spontaneously and naturally without being constrained by preconceived notions arising from the senses. And I think that this is kind of like where coaching, to me anyways, is pretty cool, right? It says, hey, whoever you've been and all that you feel like you've done up until now, let go of that, because you're almost holding yourself back to your possibilities, right? Like everything you've done up to this point is like nothing compared to what you're still capable of doing, right? That type of thing. Is that kind of what they're getting at here? Because or just like stop trying so hard and kind of let some of the things happen for you, because by your personal efforts you're actually limiting the outcome.
Yes. limiting lots of outcomes, because it goes back to one of probably the oldest sayings in the world. Too many cooks in the soup spoil the soup.
Right.
Wash pot never boils, that kind of thing.
Right.
Basically what this means is that the more intervention you have, understand you're not only creating different possibilities or leaning towards other possibilities, you're shutting out other ones.
Are you saying the universe doesn't need my help?
Yeah.
Right.
There are days at the yes. I mean, I do I Ching readings, and I do tarot card readings for people from time to time or what have you, and that literally is one of the things that completely pop up. Like,
what's
that there are people that believe that the universe needs their help.
No, I mean, I'm really of the opposite one of realizing that the universe is has already done everything for me. I just need to be aware of it. I need to be, and I know that this gets kind of tricky too. I need to be aware of what I want so that I can be open to what the universe is giving, right?
Yeah, because when it starts making drastic changes with everything, understand that those things have already happened. Understand when you see the ripples going, that means that the balance has already been created. All of that is side effects from what was already done to create that balance. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So everything's still going to come out to zero. It's just everything else we're dealing with are all side effects. That's basically what this operates on the principle of.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. Suppose Subhuti, a man has an enormous body with a sense of personal experience he had also be enormous. Yes, indeed, Buddha Subhuti answered his sense of personal existence would be enormous, but the Buddha is taught that personal existence is just a name for it is in fact neither existence nor non-existence. So it's only the name personal existence. Now, as I kind of think about this, like most people and things constrain their personal existence to the space of their body and immediate physical surroundings. Is that kind of what they're talking about here?
Yeah. Basically, your world is your world. And what he means by the whole thing, Subhuti said the man had an enormous body, has a sense of personal existence. He also had to be enormous. Basically, what that meant is he was telling him at that point that, well, that means you must have a very big sense of, you must have a lot of confidence that you can change that much in the world to be able to go out there or what have you and just assume these are all right answers and you know what you're doing and everything. Does that make any sense?
Right.
And it basically means that that personal existence is then at that point identifying it as he's having him known as himself, as far as the whole I'm going to make all of a paradise. Does that make sense? Okay. It's like, again, I tell you I can do that, right?
Right.
And I pull the curtains and all you see is all this stuff, right? And you're looking and you're like, oh wow. And I'm like, look, it is a mansion. And you look at it and it's like a little shack that has mansion on it and everything, and like one of the windows fall off and stuff,
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And you're like, oh yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. Isn't it great? Yeah. It's good. That's
so
awesome.
his sense of personal existence being enormous is not somebody else's sense of enormous personal existence. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and it's basically saying that he thinks he's a lot bigger than they really are. Does that make sense? They're a little bit off base on how impactful what they're doing truly is, because it goes back to saying if you're truly reaching the truth, you know the truth, you don't have to worry about it. And when people challenge you on it, you're confident that it's the truth.
Yeah.
And you don't have, you know what I mean? That's just how that works.
For sure.
And that's the reason why this particular Buddha, which means that the Gautama Buddha, it was the Buddha of present, which means we will soon be seeing the rise of that particular Buddha, supposedly. That's what basically this is leading to.
Okay.
And it doesn't give a specific time or when or what have you, but that particular Buddha at one point will then become the past again, or the present. So we'll see how that works out. We'll become the present. Yes.
It's great shit. I love it.
I do too.
I don't know anything. I don't even know anything about it. I do. it's interesting, the journey, right? And just
Yeah.
like I said, I wanted to kind of catch up and go through it again. I actually need to read it again. But so when we started on the other piece too, I looked it up, a stream enter, right? It looks like there was another definition to a couple of these things as being these 4 stages of enlightenment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So also interesting as I am kind of looking through like the path of the initiate, like the Christ initiation path, or like other initiates, right? Mysticism and that sort of thing, and just seeing how it kind of has all these different overlays. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
there's similar terminology, right? And all the different, each religion is taking you down the same path, right? Well, each religion is, and I'm a fan of this guy, Jed McKenna. I don't know if you ever heard of him. You ever heard of Jed McKenna?
No.
Have you? Yes, I'll have to share a couple pieces with you. Like he's kind of like the beatnik spiritual guy.
Nice.
It's the kind of thing, right? With just a touch of like sardonic, I want to say, right? Just kind of like
What does sardonic mean?
Yeah. Let me look it up. I know that's the right word. I know it's the right word. Sardonic.
I don't know what that word. You're using those big people words again on me.
Yeah. It's grimly mocking or cynical. It's great. I think you will love him.
Nice.
Yeah. He's just kind of, he's not a dick, but he's a dick.
Nice.
And it's great.
That.
Because there's like the one line that he uses. He's like, look, I don't know how you're gonna get there, right? Like I don't know what your path is, but I can tell you pretty much what to expect once you get there. Right. And so that's what I'm, with everything that I'm reading and everything that I'm kind of taking in, I looking back, I can see all the steps, right? I can be like, oh my God, that happened to me, that happened to me, that happened to me, that happened to me. This is exactly how I feel. I feel like this, I feel like this, I feel like, how's this all in a book already? Right. But it's for all those that kind of came before me, right? Like, I mean, so my path looked the way that it did, but it feels the same that it's felt for many others before me.
The issue that a lot of people do not understand about the way that Buddhism was done, and the other issue, a lot of, as far as the Bodhi path, right? Like I take the Bodhi path of serenity and peace. Okay, that's what I take, because I've always wanted to make, I've always wanted to kind of try to calm down because I've got a short temper, that kind of thing, And the Bodhi path is the path that you struggle with. This is why I tell you that I believe Buddhism is for people who are truly masochists, okay? Because who are truly masochists, okay? Because it's like, whenever you are whenever you're in Buddhism, their whole thing is that you take every mishap and every misfortune and turn it and be positive about it. You know what I mean? Accept it for what it is. Be grateful for that time happened, because it can teach you a lot.
Is it any different than kind of like the mind of like an alchemist, right? Where you take the lead and you turn that into gold mentally.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
basically
similar.
Take whatever is there and just turn it into something valuable. And the reason being is because in Buddhism, you have to understand that all you have is all you're going to have in front of you, and you've got to work on that.
Right.
And it's like, I asked the Buddha, please, I pray to the Buddha, and I believe that the true Mahayana is real. I'm going to tell you, there is a lot of supernaturality in Buddhism. Okay, a lot of people don't realize that, but there is, and I am a very, very devout follower of that. And I truly believe, when I sat there in the Buddha world, and I sat down to Buddha and I said, Buddha, please help me obtain enlightenment. Please help me obtain serenity, and please help me learn peace. I believe then and only then Buddha said, okay, bet, we're going to give you the advanced course, game on. And then from that day forward, there has always been this really large cycle of true and ultimate chaos that is inevitably going to be coming at the least time that I expected. And it has been happening over and over and over again. And every time I go through it, I literally sit there and I'm like, okay, now I know what they meant by the patience that I needed to have before, because I'm going to need to have it now, because I'm going to have to get through this now. That's amazing, and that's part of how Buddhism works, is to grow into, you know what I'm saying, to be thankful for what you do have, and to be thankful for those things around you.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. I love it, brother. Well, look, I appreciate you. We'll have to keep on it. I've got to go
Yeah.
hop into work, but again, thanks for
Okay.
agreeing to do this and
Definitely.
keep going on. It's great to catch up.
Definitely catch up. You guys take care. Tell me I said hi.
I will.
All right.
Later.
Later.